You are listening to the Businesstalk podcast. I'm your host Deepak. We are honored to welcome Professor Subhash Bhatnagar, former Dean and Professor of Information Systems at the Indian Institute of Management, Ahmedabad, as our distinguished guest on today's episode. Professor Bhatnagar is a distinguished academic and thought leader in information systems. After graduating from IIT Madras in 1968, he joined the MBA program at IIM Ahmedabad and subsequently worked as a system analyst at the IIMA Computer Center. He then pursued the doctoral program at IIMA and upon completion joined the faculty in the production and quantitative methods area in 1975. Recognizing the growing importance of technology, he spearheaded the creation of the Computers and Information Systems Group in 1980 to strengthen IMS academic programs in information systems. During his 28 year of tenure at IIMA, Professor Bhatnagar held the CMC Chair Professorship in Information Technology for 6 years, served as a Dean for 2 years, and was a member of the governing board. Professor Bhatnagar's research spans e-governance, IT for development, MIS design frameworks, and decision support systems. He has authored over 90 papers published in international journals, conference proceedings, and edited volumes. He has also written 4 books, including Unlocking E-Government Potential, Concepts, Cases, and Practical Insights, and has edited 4 additional books. Under his guidance, a doctoral thesis received the Best Dissertation Award at ICIS 1998 in Helsinki. He won the Best Paper Award at the International Conference on ICT for Development in Doha in 2007, where he was also invited for one-on-one meeting with Mr. Bill Gates of Microsoft. Professor Bhatnagar served as a chief editor of the International Journal of Information Technology and Development and has been a member of the editorial boards of 7 international journals. He has also served as an e-governance advisor at the World Bank in Washington, D.C., where he has played a key role in mainstreaming e-government initiatives across the bank activities for 6 years. In this episode, Professor Subhash Bhatnagar explores his pioneering research, unlocking the power of e-governance, lessons from research and practice. So let's not keep you waiting. Please join me in welcoming Professor Subhash Bhatnagar to the podcast. Professor Bhatnagar, thank you for graciously accepting our invitation. It's an honor and privilege to have you with us today.
Deepak, first of all, thank you for having me on this podcast. Let me begin with your first query, that is, how did I become interested in e governance? For a decade and more, in the 80s, government agencies were using for large volume data, decision support, the world over, because computing resources were not available with citizens. They were only available with the government, so internal processing was being done. My primary interest was in exploiting the use of information technology. That means at that time it was computers, now it's much broader. In private sector as well as government to improve performance of organizations. At around 1992, internet was becoming popular, the World Wide Web was becoming popular. So some power and ability in citizens to connect to government systems was coming. And I think that's when Amazon started its online bookstore. And it showed that you can actually offer services from the private sector to a client. At about the same time, Al Gore brought his reinventing government program, which was nothing but really another word for e-governance, because he was talking about using technology to improve processes within the US government. And clearly, I also got interested in the topic and started including this in my research projects and so on. Now, the second question of how my interests have evolved over time. Naturally, my interests were in using the technology of the day to, in a sense, in e-government, improve service delivery. Now, as the technology of the day changed, my own effort was, can this new technology be integrated in service delivery? Can service delivery be further improved? And so, new technologies coming in. You see, first the chip came, and everywhere you had chip based cards. A small chip, driver's license, this license, everything had a chip on the card. Then RFID came, then mobile phones came, uh, then payment systems came. So my interest has evolved, and now we talk about AI. So the interests have evolved in using what is available today as technology. How do you use it in government? So
Very
that's my
insightful.
short.
Yeah. Professor, could you walk us through the key framework or models that have shaped your understanding of effective e-governance?
Okay. Now I would say that there are no great models in e-government. There are frameworks. There were some seminal papers which were the foundation. I would rank a paper by Gartner, Michael Gartner, in the Harvard Business Review in 1990, entitled Business Process Reengineering. Now, that was all about looking at the processes of service delivery, of course, at that time in the private sector, benchmarking those processes with the best in the world, looking at which processes were redundant and did not add any value to the ultimate outcome, and looking at technology, where could technology enable a process. So it was exactly what e-government is. So that was one of the founding papers which contributed to the growth of e-government. Second, I would say we began with e-government, but then slowly e-government was somewhat restrictive, only focusing on efficiency uh, and a little bit of effectiveness. But governance is much broader. And to the citizen, governance is very important because transparency is important, accountability is important, reliability is important. So as the e-governance movement was taking place, and these government and governance were being used interchangeably, the other framework that was important was to look at good governance. What are the elements of good governance? And as I was narrating, the elements were exactly these, that you have to uh, share information with people, make your processes transparent, make your decisions transparent, make them error free, and in doing so, some of the ills that have crept in, particularly in the developing world. You see, when the demand for a service is high and the supply is limited, corruption takes place, bribery can take place. And this is not just one country, it is happening all over the globe. And if you make systems transparent, if you bring in governance, then you can also impact that low level bribery. So these two models were very important. They were the foundation stone. The third was indeed a model, and that was a model of what we call maturity of e-governance. And that was a model of Gartner had proposed it. And it was simply that as technology was evolving, he said maturity has three, four levels. The first maturity level is simply sharing information. So in the early days on the web, a government department would display how do you receive this service, what is the time that you expect, something that they will put on a board in the office, they started putting on the web. So that was the first stage, sharing information. Then, as technology became more prevalent, speeds became okay. Uh, he said the next level was interactivity. That not only could you see information, you could actually interact with the agency. So then, people began to download forms, fill forms, send the forms to the department, and then they will get processed. As technology evolved further, speeds evolved further, accessibility improved, the third stage came as transaction processing, which means that in any government transaction, if you wanted a certificate or if you wanted a license, there are several steps that are involved. There were payments that are involved. You provide information, you receive documents. Now, if all those processes could become, IT enabled, then it became a transaction processing. So that was clearly the third stage. It also required that the back end in the government systems, in the government departments, they improve their IT infrastructure. They design software which can handle the processes and so on. And the fourth maturity level that Gartner defined was actually called transformation. Transformation would really mean, the kind of things we were talking about earlier on building in transparency, building in accountability, and actually completely changing the way services were delivered. So I would feel these are the three frameworks or models that are the founding pillars of e-governance.
Professor, from your research and fieldwork, can you share a specific case where e-governance significantly improved citizen services or engagement?
Okay. Now, I would like to share an application which is almost global everywhere. Uh, and that is, you know, in many countries or in every country almost, you have a tax collection agency. In India, it's called income tax. In the US, it's called IRS. And somewhere it is called tax agency. Now, collecting taxes through an e-governance application is, I think, the most uh, powerful application because it is global. And if we recollect, this process for a tax-paying citizen used to be very cumbersome and very painful because for a year around you had to collect all documents to keep a tab on how much you have earned. You had to keep documents on if you've already paid some kind of taxes on the way. Then, in filing and computing, because the laws of income tax could be very complex uh, for different people, for different agencies, many errors could be created. If an error was created and you submitted an error prone, let's say, a return to the tax agency, or filed a paper to the tax agency, then there will be a query, there will be a long process. So, all I'm suggesting was that the tax collection process was very, very painful for the people. And today, with technology enablement, IT enablement, or the e-governance application, it's becoming a breeze because the government virtually tells you this is your income, this is how much tax you have paid, and this is how much you need to pay. You have to do nothing, you just have to verify that are these correct or not, or if there is something that the government has not been able to correct, you have to put in there. Then hundreds of apps have come which will easily calculate the tax and all that. So life has become really easy. Uh, when it was not easy, everyone went to a chartered accountant. There were in every country there were hundreds of agencies which are only doing tax clerical work. So this tax collection agency has been a very powerful application across the globe. And what does it do? By making the tax collection simple, it helps the government because more and more people now will declare their taxes because it is not so painful. So their tax collection increases. Now we talk about all the AI and its ability, analytics and all that. Actually, the government can understand uh, if they connect an individual with the location, they can understand which areas of the market are maximum number of people filing taxes, business taxes. So a lot of analytics can be built into also for government decision support of how to. So I think that's a very powerful application. However, this application only touches the lives of those who pay taxes. I want to mention one other application which, at least in India and I think in many other countries, the developing countries, touches the lives of ordinary people. And that is managing land records. This is one of the earliest applications that prospered in India. Every state tried to do it. Now, look, land records are very important for farmers. Why? Because when they go for a bank loan, they must prove that they own a piece of land. And they must prove that they owned it yesterday, not 1 year back. So therefore, having a current document which says a farmer owns this much land, this much area, this much crop, and all that is extremely important. Now, these systems had to be in rural areas because these documents of land ownership were given in rural areas. They were highly prone to delays and corruption because the staff of the government office knew that farmer is going to take a loan from the bank, is going to benefit. So he thought it was justified to have a portion of that loan as a as an inducement for quick delivery. Now what has happened is that most states and most countries have management of land record as an important application where a database has been created of land owned by everybody. A lot of technology has been used in that. Some countries use low flying satellites, other countries can use drones. In India, the size of plots is so small that we can't use those technologies. We have other means of mapping and creating a database, geo database of land records. And a farmer can get a land record now either sitting at home if he has the wherewithal or going to an office in absolutely 5 minutes. So it has made life extremely easy for them. Any updation when there's a sale of land or when there's a given away by a parent to their kids and all that, that gets automatically updated because two departments which deal with these separately are now connected. So you go and register a transfer of land and it immediately updates the land record. So tremendous benefit to the farmers. So I think these two applications is what I would like to highlight.
Professor, what are the most common barriers government face when implementing digital solutions and how can they be overcome?
Well, let me talk about first general barriers which is across virtually all the countries. Now, whether it's a developed country like US and something in Europe, or is it in India? Firstly, levels of literacy vary. So literacy is a big barrier, but more than literacy, the digital literacy varies. We know that in most countries, uh, in India, 85 million people have a phone, but they cannot exploit even 10% of the capability of the phone because they do not have the digital literacy. So that becomes a barrier. Uh, then I would say there is also a certain lack of trust between the citizen and the government. And how has that lack of trust happened? Because earlier systems from which we have graduated into e governance were mismanaged, large number of people to be served. There was corruption and bribery. So, people did not trust. So, once you do not trust an agency, then it's not easy. I have examples that in somewhere in a district in one of the states, when the agency wanted mobile numbers of the people so that they could send messages to them that your thing is ready, people refused to give it because they said we don't know what they will do with the mobile number. So it's actually that trust has to be developed within the government. And then I would say the federal structure, both in the US, for example, every state is different. A service delivered in one state is quite different from another. State taxes are different. In countries like India, district level is different. States have different rules. So it does two things. A, it does not allow a single uniform application to be developed for most government departments. Only those departments which are centrally governed can have a countrywide application, but otherwise, states and districts, variations. That means it's expensive. They cannot design. So that's also a problem in spreading e-governance. Languages is another problem because we have multiple languages. Some countries are fortunate in that sense that they have only a single language. So English language becomes a barrier. And just large populations are the demand and supply is very difficult. So I think these are the barriers which apply to every country.
Professor, how can e-governance initiatives ensure that marginalized or digitally less illiterate populations are not left behind?
I think very important aspect, because these marginalized people are not small in numbers. In 80% of the world, there are very huge populations of marginalized people. So let's see what is important in governance. The basic is, first, the back end must have reform processes, which the governments can do. But then to access that service in e-service, the citizen has to have access to internet. Now, clearly, even as we were discussing just now, somebody has a mobile phone, doesn't know how to use and access. So one thing that we have to do is that we have to recognize that how can we create access to marginalized population, uh, which I would say the Indian solution to this is a very unique solution. We have something like 500,000 citizen service centers located in rural areas, serving a cluster of 4 or 5 villages. And what are these service centers? These are connected with the internet, they have computing resources, and more important, they have a person to help the rural person. So, both it is an assisted center, plus it provides the access. So I think that's one solution that most countries, and many countries like in earlier Brazil and Latin America and other countries used to have internet cafes. They could provide these services. So you have to have these kinds of public access points, which are both assisted and provide access. So that's one. Secondly, I think multilingual interfaces are important, because and it's possible to do now. We might perhaps discuss somewhere, if the discussion arises how that can be done. That is, and thirdly, interfaces have to be designed in a very simple manner. I think that area of interface needs a lot of improvement across many countries. So I think these are a few things that can be done. One last thing, recognizing the penetration of mobile. I think lot many mobile apps need to be developed for something that was earlier done through a desktop or a laptop or whatever. So if, let's say, we can provide access to every government service through a mobile app, I think the poorer population or marginalized population would certainly benefit a great deal.
Professor, are there any example of innovative e-governance practices from India or abroad that stand out in terms of scalability and impact?
I think scalability and impact, because India is a large country, I would not like to go elsewhere. India has enough examples of scalability. I would like to talk about two things. We know that Aadhaar, the unique identity of a citizen, given to more than 1 billion people, what could be a greater scale? And given in a manner that no, duplications do not arise, Cap- and capturing uh, eye scanning, capturing photographs, all of that required, first of all, a great software design and required a great management to actually put this into action. And that's a phenomenal application. Now, Aadhaar, the unique identity, is a basis for delivery. In itself, if I have an Aadhaar identification, that's nothing for me. But then using an Aadhaar identification and connecting the Aadhaar identification to a bank account, the government has done wonders. Because in most countries, whether it's the US, where social security must pass to unemployed, or it's India, where a lot of subsidies and all that must be passed to poor citizens, how do you pass money to a. Earlier, there used to be various channels where a lot of human intervention was there. And human intervention always meant that a part of the subsidies would never reach the end. Today, this direct transfer is a phenomenal thing, and only Aadhaar has enabled it. Because now a bank account, an Aadhaar number, really becomes your bank account. So all that the government has to send to some agency is that, look, we want to pay this much to this Aadhaar number. Given that it is connected or seeded with the bank account is seeded with the Aadhaar number, from Aadhaar number they can pull out the bank account. Then they know. And there's one other element of which bank that is also captured. And then you have, instant transfers to a lot of people. So that's a very powerful application that many countries can use. And the other is the UPI. Everyone's ability to pay from one bank to another bank. That is all. That is as simple as that. That UPI enables payment from one bank to the other. Now, even UPI, and I would like to emphasize this, these are not just achievements in technology. Of course, technology was great, but these are also achievements in managing the implementation of that technology. They have to create a full new National Payment Corporation of India to actually manage the UPI. So you have the banks, you have the National Payment Corporation, you have Google Pay and all these agencies, and you have people. And these four distinct entities are all connected, and payment is so easy. So these are both very powerful applications, which in India are at a scale which no other country has. There are billions of UPI transactions in India, and there are 500 million active UPI users in India. That's more than population of many countries put together. So these are two wonderful applications in India.
Professor, how critical is the policy environment in shaping successful e-governance, and what lessons can emerging economies learn?
I think policy is extremely important because first there has to be policy on technology spread. Every country is concerned about privacy, to what extent privacy should govern. Every country is interested or very concerned about security. That are these systems secure? Can somebody else come in and break them down and so on? So these are all governed by a technology policy in some way. Then there are policies in terms of how the applications would be developed. In India, when the National E-Governance Program was launched in 2006, and then it was enhanced in 2014 as Digital India, the cornerstone of that policy was public-private partnership. Because government neither had the resources nor the capability to build sophisticated systems. So you needed public-private partnership, and therefore there had to be a policy of encouraging public-private partnership. Then I would say also policies need to be designed because after all, entire e-governance is based on what is your IT infrastructure. What is the bandwidth that you make available on networks? Now, how would you promote or expand your IT infrastructure? You have to have private investment. So there have to be policies of incentivizing investment in new technologies and all that. So policies govern many important aspects. Policies of right to information. I mean, there are many policies. So policies are very important in that respect.
Professor, how do you see emerging technologies like AI, blockchain, and data analytics transforming the landscape of government services?
Achha. I will perhaps let me talk about AI. Because AI has three elements. It has the large language models and therefore LLMs and the ability to process communication. First, to understand what the other party is saying, to parse it, and to then pull out, create relevant questions out of that and pull out from large data answers and provide back to the person in very cogent language in multiple forms. So governments have to use that capability. Private sector has been using AI-based chatbots. Most now, most citizens want to know, as we were saying, rules and sharing information. Now, sharing information can be done through chatbots, AI-based chatbots. So that's one area. Second, AI has the capability of handling large amounts of data, big data. Okay, so many applications have big data. I mean, populations are large. To give you some examples, uh, third is the analytical capability. Now, analytical capability, for example, if an agency where crime is being reported collects comprehensive data on where the crime happened, what time it happened, which state it happened, all of that location, who was involved, all. If you analyze all that data, you have predictive analysis of what is likely to happen in crime incidents. And if you have predictive analysis, which would be sharper, I'm not saying this analysis was not being done. It was being done earlier, but the tools were not there. Now you have much sharper tools. If you use those tools and have predictive analysis, then you can provide crime prevention to match this. So that kind of capability should be used. Even bigger data, I mean, some I know that in somewhere in Argentina or somewhere, they're using, normally traffic is managed in big cities in a kind of static manner. The light will come off for 10 seconds and go off and whatever it is, but it's all static, pre-decided. Even if there are variations, they may be okay, morning, afternoon, evening. But you can now do variations in real time if you capture large amounts of traffic data in real time. And that is possible to use AI. So, these capabilities of processing language in a meaningful way, answering analytical, big data, all of these can enhance the capability of e-government systems.
Professor, for policymakers, technologists, and researchers looking to make a real impact, what are the key takeaways from your research and practice that they should keep in mind?
Uh, what should, okay. So I think we're talking about learnings from what the policymakers can take away. I would say there are about, I have uh, four or five learnings. One learning is that, as I had mentioned earlier, uh, please re-engineer the government processes completely as far as possible before pushing technology in it, because a badly designed existing process enabled by any kind of advanced technology is not going to give you much result. So, and I'm saying with my experience that the amount of effort that should be put in re-engineering is not put, and that is many times because of administrative rigidity, and boundaries of departments not speaking to each other. There are many factors in the way governments are organized that this re-engineering does not take place. So that's a very important issue of re-engineering. Secondly, I think when you have a e-governance project, or for that matter any IT project, there are two elements to it. One is you need to minimize costs. I mean, cost is an important element, particularly for not well resourced countries, but for every country. And of course, there's a value that this application adds. Now, I have often seen that many designers or project leaders focus much more on cost than in value. I think costs are important, but they must also look at value. I mean, just to give a very trivial example, I was in Yemen once on a World Bank mission, and a fisherman in his own language came excited to me and showed me this geo location uh, instrument costing $4,500. And I said, how this poor man has this? He said, actually, we go fishing. If we get a large catch, we just capture. We go there again second day, third day. He thought that the value This is $4,500 was very expensive, but the value delivered was much more. So this is on a personal example, but I'm saying equation of value and cost must be kind of managed well. Also, public-private partnership I have already mentioned, but in developed countries there are good frameworks for public-private partnership. But in developing countries, government departments who have private partnerships always think private partner is a subordinate. They push them, ask them for undue things. So I would argue that treat your partner as an equal partner, otherwise you will not have a successful project. You can't push these things. And these are not really technology based, but these are how you manage these projects. And private sector is entitled to reasonable profits. Every bureaucrat must understand that fact. Okay, not push them around. Also, maybe uh, one should, once projects have been done, there should be some feedback and impact assessment, which is in India. I was involved in a national impact assessment in 2007. No impact assessment has been done after 2007. And I don't see in literature many other countries doing it. So we are investing large amounts of money. Why not understand whether what good they are creating? Maybe from that understanding, something better will happen. So I think the other thing is that uh, many agencies want to use the latest technology. A lot of pride. That is not important. What value you deliver is important. Don't try untested technologies, because just use of latest technology is no achievement. Delivering value from appropriate technology is what is the achievement. So these are a few things that people, and eventually, of course, innovative ideas have to be encouraged, and it is the government policy that will encourage innovative ideas and all that. So I think these are some of the lessons that people can take. One other lesson, finally, I talked about the interfaces not being good. And that is true, because the way some countries design interfaces and other countries is vastly different. If you go to UK, they have a huge department for designing interfaces, public-private partnership working in teams, joint teams with this thing. And their agency people will go to the homes of those users, citizens who are using, and observe where are they getting stuck in navigating a app, the website, and then ask them questions and use this feedback to redesign their system. Maybe we can use AI to get that feedback now. But interfaces have to be designed well. They need to use, rapid technologies, agile, uh, so it's extremely important, if you want to increase the usage, having invested in technology, that you design simple. And in developing countries, largely the websites are very painful. Somewhere or the other, you will get stuck. You won't know how to proceed. The language is not clear. So that is my last thing, that the interfaces should be designed well.
Professor, our podcast is also viewing by research scholars, faculty members, and PhD scholars. Do you have any advice for them to identify the next level of research in e-governance?
Look, research in e-governance will still have to stand on three pillars. Clearly, technology is a pillar, and I think those who are technology oriented should be focusing on what analytics and big data and all of that can do. But I would say e-governance projects are equally important as how do you manage these projects, who partners, how are they designed, what kind of teams. And therefore, people who are researchers in the field of management have really to focus on these areas. Okay, how is user training done? How can we talk about digital literacy, but somebody has to talk about what can be a strategy to improve digital literacy. Pricing comes to mind. Okay, in India, because the prices of mobiles are low, this penetration has happened. So I think at the policy level, some new thinking has to happen, and Researchers have to think about what are the new policies. At the design level and managing the project level, some research has to happen. And at the technology level, clearly, uh, technology will evolve, and I don't think anyone has to create new technology for e-governance. Existing will be fine, but how to deploy them? Now, there are just a last thing. There are many instruments now which are used for health diagnosis. Now, earlier, what happened? You take a cardiogram, but to analyze it and to discover what is it telling you, you needed a person, highly trained person, 6 years training, highly salaried person. Today, with AI, you don't need that person. You can actually build in the cardiogram a recommendation for what is it showing. Like that, there are many other instruments. So also, these kinds of research can take place, and they can take place in several areas. I mean, medical, wherever services are provided, these things can take place. So the scope is vast. And I think what researchers can do is two, three things. What I have done in my life is to study what has been done, to discover what were the problems in doing that, and how it could be improved. So that's one way to do research, from case based understanding and then making recommendations. Technology research is a different thing. So you can do many kinds of. There is no fundamental research that can take place in e-governance. It's a applied topic. So I think this is the kind of research.
Thank you, Dr. Subhash Bhatnagar, for sharing your invaluable insights on e-governance. It's fascinating to see how research and real-world practice come together to drive digital transformation, empower citizens, and make government systems more inclusive and effective. To our listeners, we hope today's conversation has given you a deeper understanding of the challenges, opportunities, and innovations in e-governance. Whether you are a policymaker, researcher, or simply curious about the role of technology in public service, there is much to take away and reflect on. Thank you very much, Dr. Subhash Bhatnagar, for joining us today.
Thank you.